Good evening, dear viewers, dear friends of our podcast. On this session, we have the honor and the pleasure to welcome here Mr. Igor Shnurenko, who is a well-known author in the topic of AI, artificial intelligence, and also covering topics of all modern geopolitical aspects that influence our today's world. Welcome, Mr. Shnurenko. Can you hear us?
Thank you for this opportunity, but I'm not really keen on talking about geopolitics because I think it's more or less a smokescreen, and it's not worth it, basically. But
Interesting.
I'll explain later
A smoke
if we're
screen
going
for
to
what?
talk
Could you please
subject.
specify? Could you please specify a smoke screen for what?
Because the world is now, one would say that it's even ruled by the entity that I called Leviathan, which is it was created by people, no aliens, no some hidden civilizations. It was created basically by us, by our civilization, but it's a complex of the systems of artificial intelligence and people and collectives of people and groups. Some of them have the power, some of them coming from political class, but they're serving the entity. They are not they are not really actors in this game.
Have you watched?
So
Sorry to interrupt you. Have you watched the film, the Russian film Leviathan? I think it's about 10 years old, relatively modern
it's
Russian film.
I haven't, but I have the idea, and I think the Russian film tells a story about the some person who fights the Leviathan as a state, and it's a very deep thought that this Leviathan I am talking about, the digital Leviathan or the AI Leviathan, uh, it is created on the basis of a state. It's basically state modernized, the state digitalized. But we can talk about this
Yeah,
later.
I think, and sorry, the last thing I'm going to say, the reason I gave the reference to the Russian movie Leviathan is because it struck me that back then it really didn't matter who was on top of the state, because more or less the system remained the same and the corruption remained the same, and that's why I thought this analogy was adequate for this case. And if I hear what you say, is also that's why you also do not want to touch on geopolitics, because you say, if I understand you correctly, it really doesn't matter so much who you see on the TV. There are other systems that actually rule the what's going on around us. Is this correct? Have I understood you correctly?
Yeah, and also when we perceive this mass media narrative, we're getting the idea that states somehow are ruled by persons, and even this term authoritarianism is coined. And I think it's deceiving term, and the situation is quite different. Because yes, of course, the facade we can see on the facade we see a person who rules, but in essence, the power has become anonymous, and it happened almost everywhere. It's a general rule now, so it's the anonymous power, and it doesn't matter who we see on TV screens. And I have an impression during the last 4 or 5 years that in some cases these persons are even generated because the technology allow us to do it now. So the technology allow us to generate images and speeches, and even top politicians like Putin. I think in certain his certain appearances were really deep fakes. Not all of them, but certain, because I think this machine, the machine of propaganda, it needs a lot of input. It needs to produce many things at once. And so, of course, they're using these AI technologies, and especially generative AI, which is actually supplants now the not only political life but also other fields of human activities.
But talking about the topic of Leviathan and the current development of AI, do you think there is a prehistory of this topic? So when did it start? What do you think? Is it the 19th century with the development of technology, or it's something that we can
I even tracked this history in my books because let's see, this book was actually translated into Bulgarian. It's The Demon Inside.
The Demon Inside,
and
within
here I wrote about the origins of these artificial intelligence systems and the so-called anatomy of artificial intelligence. And then there was another book, let me find it here, To Kill the Leviathan. And it tells about the political aspect. It's also translated into Bulgarian. Da ubiješ Leviathan, right? And but there was a follow-up, which is now available only in Russian, Leviathan Unchained. And here I tracked the philosophical origins of this entity, which acts as entity which actually influences the decision making in a big way, I think. And the reason I called this entity Leviathan was that when I came to the roots of artificial intelligence about 5 years ago, of course, I discovered this book, this philosophical book by English philosopher Thomas Hobbes, which is called Leviathan. And from the first pages, it tells about artificial intelligence. So this is the story, and it's written in the 17th century. So it tells how we construct some artificial creature out of people that serve the state, and some of them will be the head, some of them will be shoulders, some of them hands, and so on, some of them heart, of course, and brain, yeah? So that's how Thomas Hobbes created this notion of Leviathan. And of course, this notion comes from the Bible as a description of a creature created by God, and you cannot fight with this creature, you cannot win over this creature. So the God of the Old Testament created Leviathan to kind of show the man his place, and to threaten him and to instill fear of his powers. And that's how the modern state was created in the 17th century. And of course, the state needs some kind of synchronization. The parts of the state, these hands and shoulders and feet, they could, and other parts, they could act together. Synchronization to this modern state gave poetry, literature, these human activities. So
good
it was
synchronization,
this Leviathan of the old, this Leviathan of the past, of this nation states,
welfare state
of previous centuries. These Leviathans, they needed a lot of human input in sense of poetry, mostly, because poetry synchronizes people in a big way. And now it's replaced this digital Leviathan, as I called it, this entity. Of course, it also synchronizes people, but by means of memes. So by the means of carefully prepared structures,
visual structures
of the media, audio and video and some platforms serve only because of that, to synchronize people, for them to be a part of this Leviathan.
This would mean that nowadays Leviathan doesn't need much of that sophisticated art and music and poetry to synchronize people. But it's rather a bit more primitive one, that
of course, it doesn't
instinctive one.
need that, and even I would say even more, it sees a competition in human poetry or human literature, or all forms of human art, and it replaces them with its own products. Of course, it's done because this real digital synchronization needs not even persons, it needs some individuals who are all members of a swarm. So they're involved in this swarm, and they wait for their kind of a sanction that allows them to do this or that. And the sanction comes in a way that, for now, currently, we still even have a kind of a likeness of a choice, or a semblance of a choice, but it's not a real choice. And I can give you a few examples. For instance, in financial markets, I heard recently an interview with billionaire Ray Dalio, a very important person in American business, with like a hedge fund of over $100 billion. So he was saying that he makes his decision following the AI advice always. And he was also saying that there are some people who knew about AI, who kind of use it, but they don't follow it. They don't get the way of thinking that the AI instills in them. So, and as a very smart investor, he is not only using the AI, he is following the AI. So that's one example. Another example, AI at war. If you know this war scene in a war between Russia and Ukraine, from the Ukrainian side, they use the technology called Palantir. It's also the US platform created by Peter Thiel, who is a billionaire, also very close to the circle of Donald Trump now, conservative, traditionalist, also gay, it happens. Yeah, and this person, this system, the Palantir, it collects the information from all sources, from a lot of sources, from the video cameras, from battlefield, from whatever gadgets they have, from the satellites, of course, the maps. It gives the exact position of a tank, or even a person, or a squad, or some military unit. And also it suggests, it's said that it suggests the way of having this information. But I would imagine, I mean, and there are also like many forks of decision making that the commander have to follow through to make a decision. But in any case, the system selects one of the decisions. So I think how it's been used is to kind of they install defaults on this system because the decisions at war needed to be made very quick as possible. So no time for actually checking on this device or checking on the system and having another opinion or a council of whom. I mean, he has this notebook with him, or military notebook. So I think he goes for a default decision. I'm sure about that. So it means that basically the AI system is ruling over even commanders, telling them what decisions they should make. And of course, technically, still there is a possibility of making your own decision, but you have to take a responsibility. So if you make your own decision and it's for some reason it will be wrong, it will come to some casualties or a lot of casualties or defeat, some kind of whatever happens at war. So you have to bear responsibility. And now we, as a civilization, we come to the moment where people don't want to bear any responsibility for anything, especially those in power. So those people in power, they develop these systems, they commission these systems having one main reason. They want to get rid of their responsibility to the system should be responsible for their decisions. So, and if you look at the political scene in actually many countries, not many politicians bear any responsibility now, because they have these smart systems, AI, they have AI models. So, and their decisions are selected on basis of what the AI systems tell them. And it's especially so with the widespread generative systems. So when the AI systems, they generate everything basically now. All plans, schemes, proposals, business documents, the way of actions, whatever. Yeah, and of course, and in the military field, it's been applied. First of all, the first thing they applied on the battlefield, and then later in some other fields.
But
so it means that basically people are only what they do now. They're sitting at switchboards and they're selecting what AI system would work, would make decision.
if previously it was like remote controlling people on the battlefield, and politicians at least had to take the responsibility, you want to say that nowadays they're even out of this responsibility, but doesn't it turn the whole picture even more similar to a game, to a video game, because it's applying AI into battlefield. I don't think that AI, which is serving a war situation, is taking any accountants of casualties and people. It serves only the war purpose, the winning of the war, but I don't think they're taking into account casualties. And it's a good way for politicians to steal them from the responsibility.
Yeah, you can see it from the events of the recent past, like this war in Israel and Gaza and Ukraine. A lot of casualties, a lot of people are killed, civilians. It's been compared to the First World War, but in essence, it's even worse, because we're talking of the war scene, the battlefield that is known, that is seen by satellites, every meter of it, and every person is kind of numbered and taken into account, and still they are destroying houses and they are killing people, and we don't hear of anyone being kind of brought to court. Like, for example, when the war in Vietnam comes to mind, when Some American commanders were punished by, even martial law, as the Lieutenant Kelly, I think, who burned a Vietnamese village with the people
With
in
napalm.
this village. Yeah. So still, I mean, he was responsible and he was punished, but of course, he was the only one, and it was a much more mass application of this cruel tactics. But anyway, we cannot see now anything like that, even anything like the Vietnam War. So we see that these AI systems at war, they give the bureaucrats who launch this war, they give the establishment like a blank check, do whatever you want. And I mean, not you want, you're part of the system. I may argue that being a part of this system, you cannot get out. You have to serve this system. And that's why this situation now is so much conflict between Trump and his circle and the previous administration. Anyway, so talking about the AI systems, what we have very soon, I think even this year it will happen, we will have oracles. So we will have these AI systems which are going to be given advices to people, how to behave, what to do, what course of action to select. Should you marry this woman or should you not? This oracle will tell you, stick to this woman because she believes in AI. She showed it
Trustful person.
recently, with
She's
her
to be trusted.
subscriptions and comments. So stick with her, or you have to break this woman with this woman because she doesn't respect AI.
No, there's something that we had written down as a question, which I think is there any parallel in history that humans submitted themselves to such an extent to man-made idols? Because AI is a man-made idol, and we are submitting ourselves to it voluntarily. As in, we are to such an extent externalizing crucial decisions that we used to make ourselves. So we rely on something extrinsic to us as opposed to something within ourselves. So is there any parallel in history that we have obeyed man-made idols to such an extent? Like Egypt, maybe, where they used to obey in the Old Testament, that they used to obey a lot to...
I think what comes to my mind is a parallel with creation of the first states. Because I think the creation of first states has been a very cruel operation, and also many people died because it was a transition from this naturally, rearing maybe some animals or gathering these fruits of forest or whatever is left. I mean, something of this way of life remained not only in myths but in some collective memory, I would say. But there was some leaders, military leaders, who suppressed their people into uh, an absolute submission. And of course, those peoples, they didn't have TVs or they didn't have mass media. They didn't know, I mean, whose orders they obeyed. They didn't know them personally. So it just came in a very anonymous way of just some order. You have to go to build some channel, and there would be a scarce food or not no food at all, and you will just be building this channel as long as you can live, and then if you die, nobody cares. So of course it's very unnatural for people to behave in this way. So there should be a categorical imperative, a very that makes people act this way. So makes them leave their families, go to some desert, for example, or to some uninhabited place to dig earth with their bare hands or some very primitive devices, and die in war for some chieftain, some leader. So I think that was comparable to what we have now, and it lasted some centuries. So from what we know about the states of Babylon or Assyrian, Persia, so they lasted for centuries, but eventually they ended. And of course, like if we take the state of ancient Greece, it's absolutely another matter. So it works in a very different way. So somehow there was a transition from these very cruel states
Oppression.
of very ancient history of Old Testaments, for example, Old Testament or and other sacred books. And of course, yes, very important also to mention that the functioning of these states wouldn't be possible without the unity of the military leadership and what I would call the spiritual, some spiritual entity.
Mhm.
So they needed a religion always. So even when you look into this past, you will see that always when the cult arises, the real, especially if it's Almighty God who rules over everything and who is kind of external in relation to man, who gives him orders, who demands his obedience, who can, if a person says something against it, then this God brings the Leviathan. So they all go hand by hand. These military leaders, this government, and you may call it a church or some kind of religion. And I would say that today we have the same situation.
Igor Anatolievich,
Only the names
I
are different.
want to thank you a lot for this first session. Let's continue in the next one, where we will touch base on the nowadays implications
Okay.
of what we just discussed. Thanks a lot.